Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to do something for me right now. Take out your phone. Go ahead, I'll wait. Now scroll through your social media feed for just 10 seconds. What do you see? Perfect bodies, perfect relationships, perfect lives. Success after success after success. Now, let me ask you something. How did that make you feel? If you're like most people, you probably felt a little less than, a little inadequate, maybe even a little empty. And here's the truth that nobody wants to admit. What you just saw, almost none of it is real. Welcome to the age where real is rare and fake is everywhere. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah is 32 years old. She has 47,000 followers on Instagram. Her feed is immaculate. Exotic vacations, designer clothes, romantic dinners with her perfect partner, motivational quotes overlaid on sunset backgrounds. People comment, "You're living my dream life. I wish I was you. You're so blessed." But here's what you don't see. You don't see Sarah crying in her car before she goes into work at a job she hates. You don't see the credit card debt she's drowning in to maintain that lifestyle. You don't see the 3 hours she spends editing each photo, adjusting the lighting, smoothing her skin, making her waist smaller. You don't see her partner who barely talks to her unless a camera is involved. Sarah isn't happy. Sarah is exhausted. Sarah is performing. And Sarah is not alone. She represents millions of us who have become actors in our own lives, performing authenticity while running further and further away from what's actually real. Think about this for a moment. We live in the most connected time in human history, yet we've never felt more isolated. We have more ways to communicate than ever before, yet genuine conversation is dying. We can be anyone we want online, so we've stopped being ourselves. The algorithm rewards the fake. It rewards the polished, the exaggerated, the sensational. So we learn to play the game. We learn that vulnerability doesn't get likes. Imperfection doesn't get shares. Reality doesn't go viral. But you know what does? The highlight reel, the filtered version, the carefully curated illusion. I remember a time, and some of you older folks will remember this too, when a photograph was just a moment captured in time. You took it, you developed it, and if your eyes were closed or your hair was messy, well, that was life. That was the memory. Now, we take 50 photos to get one usable shot. And even then, we run it through 6 filters, adjust the contrast, smooth out our pores, whiten our teeth, and caption it with something inspirational we found on Pinterest. We've become masters of deception. And the saddest part? We're deceiving ourselves most of all. Let me be brutally honest with you about what this costs us. It costs our peace. When you're constantly performing, you can never rest. You're always on, always worried about how you're being perceived, always comparing yourself to everyone else's highlight reel while you're living your behind the scenes. It costs us our relationships. Real connection requires vulnerability. It requires showing up as you actually are, not as you wish you were. But when we're all wearing masks, how can we truly connect? We end up with hundreds of friends and followers, but nobody who really knows us. It costs us our self-worth. When your value is determined by likes, comments, and shares, you're building your identity on quicksand. What happens when the likes stop coming? What happens when the algorithm changes? Who are you when nobody's watching? And here's the most devastating cost of all. It costs us our truth. When you spend enough time pretending to be someone you're not, you start to forget who you actually are. The mask becomes your face. The performance becomes your reality. And one day you wake up and realize you're living a life that looks good from the outside, but feels hollow on the inside. You might be thinking, okay, I get it, things are fake. But why is real so hard to find? Here's why. Being real is terrifying. Being real means admitting you don't have it all figured out. It means showing your scars, not just your victories. It means saying, I'm struggling, in a world that only wants to hear, I'm winning. Being real means risking rejection. Because when you show people who you actually are, they might not like it. They might judge you. They might walk away. And that possibility, that vulnerability, is what keeps most of us hiding behind our carefully constructed facades. But here's what I've learned, and I want you to really hear this. The people who will reject the real you were never your people anyway. The right people, the real people, they're not looking for perfection. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for someone who has the courage to be human in a world that demands everyone be superhuman. Let me tell you what happens when you choose real over fake. First, you breathe easier. There's an incredible lightness that comes from dropping the act. When you're not constantly monitoring yourself, editing yourself, performing yourself, you reclaim energy you didn't even know you were losing. Second, you attract real people. Authenticity is magnetic. When you stop pretending, you give others permission to do the same. And suddenly, you're surrounded by people who know the real you and love you anyway, not despite your flaws, but including them. Third, you discover who you actually are. This might be the most transformative part. When you stop performing, you can finally start exploring. Who am I when nobody's watching? What do I actually want? What makes me come alive? These questions can finally get real answers. I learned this the hard way. For years, I built a version of myself that I thought the world wanted to see. Professional, successful, always positive, always in control. I was climbing the ladder, checking all the boxes, looking good on paper. But I was miserable, and I couldn't figure out why success felt like such a failure.
Then one day, I broke. I couldn't hold it together anymore. And you know what happened? I expected catastrophe. I expected people to abandon me. I expected my world to fall apart. Instead, people leaned in. They said, "Thank you for being real." They said, "I've been feeling the same way." They said, "I'm so glad you're human." That was the day I learned that my imperfection was my greatest asset. My struggle was my superpower. My authenticity was what people were actually hungry for all along. So how do we do this? How do we choose authenticity in a world that rewards performance? Let me give you some practical guidance. First, audit your life. Take an honest look at where you're performing versus where you're being real. Your social media, your conversations, your relationships, your career. Where are you wearing a mask? Why? And most importantly, what would happen if you took it off? Second, start small. You don't have to bare your soul to the world tomorrow. Start with one person. Start with one conversation where you tell the truth about how you're really doing. Start with one post that shows the messy middle, not just the highlight reel. Third, get comfortable with discomfort. Being real is uncomfortable. It's vulnerable. It's scary. That feeling doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're doing it right. Growth lives on the other side of comfort. Fourth, curate your inputs. You become like the content you consume and the people you surround yourself with. If everyone in your feed is performing perfection, you'll feel pressure to do the same. Seek out authentic voices. Follow real people. Engage with content that makes you feel seen, not inadequate. Fifth, practice self-compassion. You're going to mess this up. You're going to catch yourself performing. You're going to compare yourself to others. You're going to feel tempted to filter and edit and hide. That's okay. That doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. Be gentle with yourself in the process. Sixth, remember why it matters. When it gets hard, and it will get hard, remind yourself why authenticity is worth it. Because a life lived in truth is worth 1,000 lives lived for likes. Because real connection is worth more than 1,000,000 shallow interactions. Because being yourself is the ultimate form of freedom. Here's something powerful to consider. When you choose authenticity, you don't just change your own life, you change the culture around you. Every time you post something real instead of something perfect, you give someone else permission to do the same. Every time you admit you're struggling, you make it safer for someone else to ask for help. Every time you show up as your authentic self, you create space for others to do the same. This is how movements start, not with perfection, but with courage. Not with having it all together, but with being brave enough to fall apart and let people see it. Think about the people who have impacted your life the most. I'll bet they're not the ones who seemed perfect. They're the ones who were real. The teacher who admitted they didn't have all the answers. The friend who cried with you instead of just saying, "Stay positive." The mentor who shared their failures, not just their successes. Real is rare. And that's exactly why it's so valuable. So here's my challenge to you tonight. Choose one area of your life where you've been performing and commit to bringing authenticity to it this week. Maybe it's admitting to a friend that you're not actually doing fine. Maybe it's posting something unfiltered on social media. Maybe it's having the hard conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's just sitting with yourself, no phone, no distractions, and asking who you really are. Whatever it is, take one step toward real. And here's my promise to you. It will be worth it. You might lose some followers, you might lose some friends who were only there for the performance, but you'll gain something far more valuable. Yourself, your peace, your truth, your life. Because here's what I know to be true. At the end of your life, you won't regret the moments you were real. You'll only regret the moments you were fake. You won't wish you had more likes or followers. You'll wish you had lived more boldly, loved more deeply, and shown up more authentically.
You won't remember the perfect photos or the flawless presentations. You'll remember the real conversations, the genuine connections, the moments when you were brave enough to be vulnerable and found that vulnerability was your greatest strength. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand at a crossroads. We can continue down this path of performance where everyone is pretending and nobody is connecting, where we're all drowning in loneliness while surrounded by friends, where success is measured in metrics that don't matter and validation comes from strangers who don't know us. Or we can start a revolution of realness. It won't be easy, real never is, but it will be worth it. Because in a world where fake is everywhere, choosing to be real is an act of rebellion. It's an act of courage. It's an act of love for yourself and for everyone who desperately needs permission to stop pretending. So I'm asking you, will you join this revolution? Will you be the person who shows up authentically, even when it's uncomfortable? Will you be the person who tells the truth even when a lie would be easier? Will you be the person who connects genuinely even when performing would be safer? Will you choose real even in a world that's begging you to be fake? I hope you will, because the world doesn't need another filtered version of you. The world needs the real you, the messy, imperfect, still figuring it out you. The you who has struggles and scars and stories that could help someone else feel less alone. That version of you, that's the version worth showing up as. Real is rare, but it doesn't have to be. It starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with all of us deciding that authenticity is worth more than applause, that truth is worth more than trends, and that being ourselves is worth more than being liked. Thank you for being here tonight. Now go out there and be courageously, unapologetically, beautifully real. The world is waiting.